This is my Coyote swap 1969 F100, and I have a Lokar shifter for my 6R80 that has sport mode. I do not have it hooked up to the transmission right now, but I'll show you how to rig that in a different video at a different time when I do that. But right now what I want to show you is how to wire it up for sport mode manual shift. So there are 3 micro switches. You have one here, you have one back here, and you have one up here. This part here is what the shifter slides into and moves to touch those switches, and when it moves over it hits that switch, so you can hear it. So there are 2 ways you can wire this thing up. You can use just these 2 switches, or you can use all 3. I personally used all 3. It might be kind of pointless to use this 3rd one, but I did it anyways. All right, let's start here. So there's 3 wires inside the 6R80 transmission. Here's a little drawing of that. Here's the shifter. You got a green violet wire that shifts down. You got a brown wire that shifts up, and you got a green and white wire that is your signal return. Those come out of the PCM connector C175B. The signal wire is 56, the shift up wire is pin 23, and the shift down wire is pin 24. So here's the switch. When the switch is released, it's making contact with the red, and when the switch is pressed, it'll switch over to the blue. This is the same with all 3 switches. If you're going to hook just 2 of the switches up and not use the one on the left, and just use the up and down switch, this is how you're going to wire them up. So you're going to hook the 2 black wires together and splice those in with the green and white wire, and then you're going to put the downshift blue wire to the green violet wire, and you're going to put the upshift blue wire to the brown wire. So for example, when you shift down, this is how your circuit is completed while the switch is pressed. So that's pretty basic, and that's probably the easiest way you're going to wire it. And if you want to do 3 switches, this is how you're going to wire them up. You're going to do all 3 black wires together, and then the switch on the manual mode switch, which is the left switch, you're going to hook the red wire up to the green and white, and then the down and up switch are going to be the same. So the downshift is going to be green violet, and the upshift is going to be on brown. So when you're in regular drive mode, this is what your switches are going to be doing if you're doing all 3. So the manual mode switch is going to be pressed, and so that's going to be closing the circuit to the blue, and the rest of the circuits are going to be open to red because they are not pressed. But then when you switch it over to manual mode, then all 3 switches are going to be released. So that gives you that left switch. The circuit is going to be towards the red side like the rest, and so that is going to allow you to use the 2 switches on the right. So once you shift up or down, it's going to close the circuit whichever way you go, and that is going to complete the circuit like this. So here you're shifting down, and the circuit's going to go through that down micro switch and the manual mode switch. This is how I wired mine. I guess it might be just one more thing that could go wrong, and you could easily and probably better off doing it just using the up and down switches and not the manual mode switch. But I just like to do things the complicated and more fun way, and I like switches, and I like to have switches work through other switches when they're switched and not switched, and everything is just confusing. So that's the way that I did it. These 2 micro switches are opposite. When you pull it down, it's activating the top switch. When you push it up, it's activating the bottom switch. So don't get that confused. So when you're shifting down, you're pulling this down and you're activating this switch. So I hooked this blue wire up to the green and violet wire. And then when you do up, you're activating this switch. So yeah, you can see that switch there. You can see that switch there. And you can see this switch right there. So when you shift up, you can see this switch. And when you shift down, same thing on the other side. It is so sweaty, hot, miserable, humid in Georgia right now. So I quit for the day. I'm going inside. That's how you hook up the manual shift on a 6R80. My truck currently isn't running. I'm finishing the wiring right now in order to give it my first start. I haven't tested out this setup, but I am 100% confident that is how it works because I have the wire schematic from Ford and I know how these micro switches work. If you have any questions, leave a comment and I will answer it. And that's how that is. Another thing, you got to make sure too that you got park, reverse, neutral, drive, and sport. Because if you don't have this thing rigged right and you can't pull it down into sport, you're stuck in drive, this isn't going to work. So you got to make sure you rig it correctly for park, reverse, neutral, drive, sport. It's not the same for other transmissions where you can just go park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then manual. That's not how it works on the 6R80. You have a separate drive and sport position. It's a very small throw. And the detent comes in when you rig it to the transmission. There is not a detent in the shifter for sport, between sport and drive.